Have you ever stopped to think about the invisible weight that sexuality carries within a relationship? So often, people believe that as long as there is chemistry in bed, everything else will naturally fall into place. They assume that passion under the sheets automatically means love, trust, and long-term connection. But is that really the truth? Or is it a comforting illusion that prevents us from seeing reality clearly? Sex, when lived with awareness, can be one of the most powerful bridges of intimacy that two people can create. It is more than just a physical act. It is a language without words, an expression of vulnerability, and a space of mutual surrender. In its healthiest form, it builds trust. It tells your partner, without a single word, "I am here with you in this moment, and I care about your joy as much as mine." The simple gestures, a gentle touch, attentive eyes, a rhythm that adapts to the other, become threads weaving the couple closer inside and outside of the bedroom. When sexuality flows in harmony, the relationship often reflects that balance in daily life. Affection is more abundant, patience is greater, and the inevitable conflicts of coexistence become easier to navigate. This happens because sex, in its healthiest expression, releases hormones that not only generate pleasure, but also strengthen emotional bonding. Still, it is essential to understand something often forgotten. Sex does not create intimacy out of nothing. It is not a magical solution. Instead, it amplifies the intimacy that already exists. It is a mirror that reflects the emotional health of the couple outside the bedroom. But here lies the danger. Many couples use sex as a patch, a temporary fix to cover deeper wounds. After fights, misunderstandings, or unresolved conflicts, they seek the bedroom as a refuge, pretending that passion erases pain. For a moment it may feel like everything is fine, but the truth remains unspoken, lurking beneath the surface. Sex, in this case, becomes an anesthetic. It distracts, soothes, but never heals. This illusion of harmony can last for a while, but eventually the problems reappear, stronger and heavier, and the cycle repeats: fight, reconcile in bed, silence the pain, and postpone the necessary conversation. Each time, the bond grows weaker, the couple drifts further apart emotionally, even while being physically close. This is how sex, instead of strengthening, begins to erode the relationship. Another subtle but dangerous trap appears when sex turns into a form of power. In many relationships, sexuality is manipulated, sometimes offered as a reward, sometimes withheld as punishment, sometimes demanded without consideration for the other. When this happens, intimacy is no longer about connection, but about control. The body becomes a bargaining chip. What should be an act of giving turns into a weapon. This dynamic does not nurture love. It breeds resentment, insecurity, and silent wounds that eat away at trust. And then, there is the even deeper layer, emotional dependence created by sexual intensity. Many people remain trapped in toxic relationships because of the strength of their physical connection. They confuse desire with love, passion with care, chemistry with commitment. The heat of the bedroom blinds them to the coldness of everyday life. It convinces them to stay in situations that, deep down, drain their soul. Here is a hard truth. Sex and love are not synonyms. You can share physical intimacy with someone without feeling any emotional connection. Likewise, you can love someone deeply and still go through seasons where sexual intimacy is challenged due to stress, health, or life's natural rhythms. But many refuse to see this. They cling to chemistry as proof of love, as if passion were enough to sustain a relationship. How many times have you heard stories of people saying, "I know he doesn't treat me well, but our connection in bed is incredible"? That is not love speaking. That is attachment to pleasure masquerading as affection. It is a trap that ties hearts to destructive patterns. But what happens on the other side when sex fades away? Of course, every couple is unique, and some can thrive without physical intimacy as their main expression of love. Yet in most cases, the disappearance of sex signals something deeper, accumulated resentments, loss of desire, or emotional distance. The absence itself is not the true enemy, the silence around it is. When couples stop talking about it, when discomfort becomes taboo, the gap only widens. The truth is this: sex is not the foundation of a relationship, but it is a vital pillar. When it disappears without dialogue, it reflects cracks in other areas. But when partners can speak honestly about desires, difficulties, insecurities, they can rebuild intimacy, even in moments of fragility. What destroys relationships is not lack of sex itself, but the inability to face it together. So, how can sex strengthen rather than weaken love? The answer lies in balance and awareness. Sex should never be the sole proof of affection, nor should it be reduced to a tool of manipulation. It must be lived with mutual respect, openness, and authenticity. Couples who can speak freely about their needs, boundaries, and expectations find in sexuality not only pleasure, but also a powerful source of bonding. Because at the end of the day, sex is not about performance or perfection. It is about presence. It is about saying to the other, "I see you, I accept you, I want to share myself with you." When sexuality is lived in this way, it ceases to be just physical and becomes spiritual, a celebration of connection that strengthens the relationship in every dimension. But let us not be naive. The same act that has the potential to heal can also wound. The same flame that warms can burn. The key is not the act itself, but the consciousness behind it. When sex is used as a remedy for loneliness, as a strategy to hold on to someone, or as proof of love, it turns into a fragile rope that cannot sustain the weight of reality. When it is used as a tool of power, it poisons, but when it is embraced as part of a whole, respect, friendship, care, and shared purpose, it becomes a source of life and renewal. That is why one must never confuse pleasure with love, nor chemistry with commitment. Desire can be fleeting, passion can be intense but temporary. What truly sustains a relationship is deeper trust, respect, and the ability to grow together. Sex is powerful, yes, but without a foundation of genuine affection, it becomes a fragile illusion. The complexity of sex within relationships becomes even clearer when we consider the masks people often wear in intimacy. How many times do we pretend satisfaction so the other person will not feel rejected? How many times do we silence our discomfort because we are afraid of disappointing? These small silences accumulate, and each unspoken word creates a wall that slowly divides the couple. True intimacy requires courage. It demands honesty, even when it is uncomfortable. It means daring to say, "This doesn't make me feel good," or "I would like to try something different," without fear of judgment. Yet many couples avoid these conversations, hiding behind the illusion that everything is fine. Over time, this avoidance corrodes trust, because intimacy without truth is only an act, a performance, not a connection. There is also another trap, confusing frequency with quality. Some believe that the more sex a couple has, the stronger their relationship must be. But this is an illusion. Quantity does not guarantee connection. What truly strengthens intimacy is the quality of presence. Two bodies can be together 1,000 times and still feel distant if the act lacks attention, affection, or genuine interest in the other's world. On the other hand, a single encounter, lived with authenticity, care, and vulnerability, can build a bond stronger than months of mechanical repetition. Sex is not a number, it is a mirror of emotional truth. And if that mirror reflects emptiness, repetition will not fill it. In the digital era, the situation becomes even more complex. Pornography, social media, and the culture of instant gratification have distorted expectations around sex. Many enter relationships comparing their experiences with what they consume online. They forget that intimacy is not about performance, aesthetic perfection, or rehearsed scripts. It is about connection. The pressure to be enough sexually often leads to anxiety, insecurity, and disconnection. Couples fall into the trap of measuring themselves by external standards instead of cultivating their own unique rhythm. This creates another danger, using sex as validation. For many, desire from the partner becomes the main proof of worth. If they want me, then I am lovable. If they don't, then I must not be enough. This fragile equation places the entire relationship on unstable ground. Desire fluctuates naturally with time, stress, routine, and age. If love is confused with sexual desire, the relationship becomes a ticking time bomb, ready to explode with the first decline in passion. But awareness can change everything. When two people see sexuality as a shared journey rather than a test of value, the pressure eases. When they understand that love is not measured only in moments of passion, but also in gestures of care, silence, and companionship, then sex regains its rightful place, not as the foundation, but as one of the pillars that support the house. Think of a house built on passion alone. It might be beautiful at first glance, vibrant, full of energy, but its walls are fragile. The storms of life, financial struggles, family conflicts, health crises soon reveal the weakness of that foundation. The house crumbles. Now imagine a house built on respect, dialogue, and shared purpose. Sex, in this case, is like the warmth of the fireplace. It does not hold the walls, but it fills the space with light and heat. It makes the house more alive, more human, more welcoming. Still, many insist on confusing the fireplace with the walls. They believe passion is enough to sustain everything. And when that flame weakens, as it inevitably does at times, they despair. They think love is over, when in reality it is simply asking to evolve into a new phase. Mature love understands that intimacy has seasons. Sometimes it is fire, other times it is embers quietly glowing. Both are valid, both have beauty, both can sustain warmth if the couple knows how to care for them. The greatest challenge is breaking free from illusions that tell us passion will last forever without effort. Illusions that make us believe sex will solve all conflicts. Illusions that convince us staying with someone just because of physical chemistry is enough. The reality is harder but also more liberating. Sex is important, but it is not everything. It can strengthen, but it can also destroy. It can heal, but it can also wound. It all depends on how it is lived. So what does it mean to live sex in a way that strengthens rather than weakens a relationship? It means choosing honesty over performance, respect over control, presence over distraction, generosity over selfishness. It means treating intimacy not as a battlefield, but as a sanctuary where both can come as they are, vulnerable, imperfect, but willing to connect. When sex is lived this way, it transcends the body. It becomes a spiritual experience where giving is as important as receiving and where the act itself is not the end, but a reflection of something greater. The decision to love, even in fragility. But when it is lived without this awareness, sex becomes destructive. It generates comparisons, insecurities, resentments. It imprisons rather than frees. It creates dependence rather than trust. It silences rather than opens dialogue. And little by little, it transforms passion into poison. That is why the phrase is true: sex can unite or separate forever. It can be the glue that strengthens the bond or the crack that widens until everything collapses. The difference is not in the act itself, but in the consciousness, honesty, and love behind it. If we pause and reflect, we see that many relationships break, not because love has vanished, but because illusions have. The illusion that desire will always be the same. The illusion that sex is enough to guarantee loyalty. The illusion that physical connection equals emotional intimacy. When those illusions crumble, people panic. They think the relationship has failed. But in reality, what has failed is the fantasy. And from that collapse, there is an opportunity to build something real. Real love does not reject desire, but it also does not depend on it as proof of existence. Real intimacy knows that bodies age, rhythms change, and yet the bond can remain alive if it is nurtured with care. In fact, many couples report that their intimacy grows deeper with time, even as the intensity of passion changes form. What matures is not only the body but also the soul of the relationship. But to reach that maturity, one must go through the fire of discomfort. One must dare to talk about what is often left unsaid: dissatisfaction, fantasies, fears, and vulnerabilities. Many avoid these conversations because they fear hurting the other, yet silence hurts more. Silence corrodes from within. A truth spoken with love has the power to build bridges, while a silence kept in fear builds walls. Sexuality, then, is not only about the body, but about the courage to reveal oneself fully. It is a mirror of how willing we are to be seen without masks. That is why it is so revealing, because in the way we live our intimacy, we also show how we live life itself. Whether with authenticity or pretense, whether with generosity or selfishness, whether with fear or freedom. For some, sex becomes an escape from reality, a way to avoid deeper conflicts. Couples may fight constantly, but use sex as reconciliation without ever addressing the true issues. At first, this can seem like passion, but over time, it becomes a dangerous cycle. The relationship survives not on dialogue, but on temporary explosions of desire. And when even that no longer masks the wounds, the cracks appear irreversibly. Others use sex as a weapon, denying it as punishment, offering it as currency, manipulating with desire. In these cases, intimacy loses its essence and becomes a tool of control. Love cannot grow where manipulation reigns. The body that should be a bridge becomes a battlefield, and every battle fought there leaves scars. Yet it is also in sexuality that the possibility of renewal lives. When two people choose to approach intimacy with respect, vulnerability, and curiosity, they rediscover each other continuously. They realize that desire is not static, but something that must be cultivated, like a flame that needs both oxygen and care. Passion is not lost with time. It changes form, asking for more presence, more creativity, more awareness. This requires unlearning what society has taught us, that passion is spontaneous, that if it fades, love has ended. The truth is different. Passion is a seed, but it needs tending. It needs laughter, novelty, patience, and sometimes simply silence together. The most lasting relationships are not those that never face decline in passion, but those that learn to navigate it, transforming each season into a new way of being close. So when we hear that sex can unite or separate forever, it is not exaggeration. It is a reminder of responsibility. Intimacy is powerful, and with power comes responsibility. Each time two people share themselves in this way, they either build or they erode. They either add trust or subtract it. They either nourish love or weaken it. There is no neutrality. The call, then, is not to fear sexuality, but to live it consciously, to ask ourselves, am I using this moment to connect or to escape? Am I honoring my partner's vulnerability, or am I taking advantage of it? Am I being present, or am I distracted? These questions are not about creating anxiety, but about awakening awareness. Because intimacy without awareness quickly becomes repetition, and repetition without meaning becomes emptiness. A relationship that survives on empty intimacy will eventually collapse under its own weight. But a relationship that nourishes intimacy with love, respect, and truth will not only endure, but thrive. Even when storms come, even when passion shifts, it will stand firm, because its foundation is not fragile. Its foundation is the decision to love with presence, not illusion. In the end, sex is not the villain nor the savior. It is simply a language. And like any language, it can be used to express truth or to disguise it. It can communicate love or manipulate. It can heal or wound. The responsibility lies in how we choose to speak it. The most beautiful relationships are those that treat intimacy not as proof, but as gift. Where every touch is not a demand, but an offering. Where every encounter is not an obligation, but a celebration. Where the body is not used as a shield or a weapon, but as a bridge toward the soul. If we understand this, then sex no longer confuses us with love. It becomes love's ally, not its substitute. It stops being a test of worth and becomes an expression of connection. It ceases to be a battlefield and becomes a sanctuary. And so we return to the warning. Attention, sex can unite or it can separate forever. If lived with honesty, respect, and presence, it becomes the glue that makes two souls stronger together. If lived without awareness, it becomes the poison that corrodes silently until nothing remains. The choice always is ours.